In this video, I'll show you how to design and construct a functional, high-power, wire-wound power resistor from scratch. And before we get into the design, this is the finished resistor we'll be building. It's a 15-ohm power resistor capable of dissipating significant power as heat. And I'll show you how to calculate the wire length needed, how to wind it properly, and how to build it so that it can survive high temperatures without cracking or failing. Now, is this cost effective or necessary when they're so easy to buy online? Well, probably not, unless you required a very precise resistance value and were unable to source them for some reason. But in my opinion, it's still a useful and interesting project for anyone learning about electronics because building one from scratch is an excellent way to understand how they actually work. Wire-wound resistors are simple but extremely robust components which are capable of handling very high temperatures. They're designed to handle significant power by winding a resistive metal wire such as nichrome, often around a ceramic core. And they're commonly used in large power supplies, motor drives, load banks, and other industrial circuits because they can dissipate far more power than standard resistors can, from just a few watts all the way up to hundreds of watts. And the basic idea is actually pretty straightforward. We have a length of resistive wire, which is often nichrome, but I'll mention some alternatives later, wound around a core material, which is again often a ceramic material, and it allows the resistor to tolerate high temperatures while maintaining stable resistance. Commercial versions of these resistors are often enclosed in cement. Sometimes they have an enamel coating, like on these vintage examples I have here. And there are also some which come with an aluminium housing to further improve heat dissipation. But the underlying component is simple enough that we can build one ourselves. So let's start by working out exactly how much wire we need. Now, before cutting any wire, we need to define three things: the target resistance in ohms, the power the resistor needs to be able to dissipate in watts, and the voltage or current the circuit will apply. These are all connected by two equations. One is that the current equals the square root of power divided by resistance, and the second is that voltage equals the square root of power multiplied by resistance. In our example today, we want a 15 ohm resistor rated to, say, 50 watts. The current at full load would be about 1.83 amps, and the voltage across the resistor would be about 27.4 volts. This all matters because power resistors get hot, very hot, often hundreds of degrees Celsius at full load. And so the electrical design doesn't just determine the resistance, it determines how much heat the resistor needs to be able to safely handle and dissipate. Before calculating the length of wire, we also need to decide what material the resistor wire will be made from. All of the wire materials listed on the screen right now have high resistivity, making them suitable for wire-wound resistors. Where they differ is usually in their temperature stability, their maximum operating temperature, their durability, and ability to dissipate heat. For high-power resistors, nichrome and camphor wire are commonly used, and in this video, I'll be using nichrome wire, which is an alloy consisting of 80% nickel and 20% chromium. Now we've selected a wire material, we can move on to figuring out exactly how much wire we need in order to achieve our target resistance of 15 ohms. Now, there are tables and calculators online that will tell you the approximate resistance value of various wire alloys based on the length and gauges that you input, but I'm going to demonstrate how you can measure this for yourself. First, we'll cut a known sample length, and for this, I'd recommend either cutting 1 meter or half a meter if that's easier. Next, we'll measure the resistance, and to do this, we'll use the multimeter in resistance mode. And one consideration here as well is to subtract the probe resistance for better accuracy in the final calculation. And so to do that, just set the multimeter to auto range, or if it's manual, select the lowest resistance range. Touch the probe tips firmly together and read the resistance value displayed on the meter. That reading is the combined resistance of the probes, leads, and any internal contact resistance. We wouldn't expect that to be high, and this value is usually less than 0.3 ohms, just depends on the quality of your meter and the probes. Once you have that value though, note it down, and in my case it's 0.1 ohms. Next, we can calculate the resistance per meter, and to determine the resistance per meter of wire, we take the measured resistance and divide it by the sample length. So in my case, I had zero point 0.5 meters of nichrome wire cut, which measured 5.3 ohms. From that, I'll subtract the probe resistance value, which was zero point 0.1 ohms, and that gives us 5.2 ohms for zero point 0.5 meters. And that tells us that it's 10.4 ohms of resistance per meter of nichrome wire. Our total required length will equal the target resistance, which is 15 ohms, divided by the resistance that we've just determined per meter. So we want a wire equivalent of 15 ohms, so 15 divided by 10.4, which is the resistance value we know for 1 meter of wire. And that tells us we need 1.44 meters of nichrome wire. And this method is more accurate than relying on purely theoretical resistance values. Remember as well to measure twice here and cut once, or even better for something like this, cut it slightly longer and we can trim it down later. I'm actually going to cut this at a length of 1.54 meters, which will give me enough extra to trim for any final adjustments and also for securing some kind of terminal connection once we're done. For the center core that we will form the wire around, we basically need something that is electrically insulating, something that can handle sustained high temperatures, something that won't crack when subjected to thermal cycling, and something that won't conduct heat into something flammable. And for this, I'll cut to the chase. I'll be using the nichrome wire wound onto a ceramic tube. And the tube acts as an electrical insulator, and it's rated for very high temperatures. That assembly, we're then going to embed in refractory cement, which is designed to tolerate heat, typically somewhere around the 1000 degrees Celsius range, without cracking or breaking down. Now, I've seen other people approach this project in a few different ways. Some skip using a center tube entirely. Instead, the wire is wound onto a rod and then removed to produce a flexible spring-like coil like this, which is then mounted in an open-air enclosure. You could use a metal rod as the winding form, but if you're leaving that rod in place, you would need some kind of reliable high-temperature insulation layer. Another variation is to remove the wire spring like this, and instead of using refractory cement, as I will, submerge it in a slurry of plaster of Paris. There's a few issues with that approach. The main one is that plaster of Paris doesn't tolerate sustained high temperatures very well. It can crack and release moisture when it's heated. You can improve this by adding sand to the plaster mix, which helps with stability, but it still doesn't approach the performance of refractory or furnace cement, which is specifically designed to handle high temperatures. The other issue with skipping having an insulated core material is that it becomes more difficult to prevent the wire windings from touching each other. As soon as windings come into contact, you effectively create shorts along the wire, which allows current to bypass whole sections of the resistor. That in turn reduces the overall resistance and affects the accuracy of the final resistor value. None of this is to say that the project needs to be done exactly the way I'm doing it. It's just important to understand the limitations of some of these different methods. And if you do use plaster of Paris, even with sand, it's generally going to be better suited for lower power circuits. Now, to wrap the wire on the tube, you'll want to anchor one end of the wire fairly securely to the tube on one end. That could be by using a small notch or hole. Anything that clamps or holds the wire in place on one end is the goal here because prevents the wire from slipping while you're winding it. Then you can begin winding the wire, try to keep consistent tension on each turn, and keep the turns evenly spaced as much as possible along the core. The spacing between the wires, aside from ensuring we aren't creating shorts, will help to improve cooling and reduce the risk of forming any hot spots once we apply power. I will speed up the video here because watching someone wind several meters of wire in real time is painful for both of us. I'll continue winding until the full length of wire has been used and leave some on each end for trimming and making the final electrical connections. On the topic of connections, nichrome really doesn't solder very well, which is something to do with the oxide layer that forms quite quickly once you heat the wire. That can lead to solder joints sometimes failing as well. You'll want to consider some kind of mechanical connection like crimp sleeves, clamps, or screw terminals. You could also crimp the nichrome wire to a short length of nickel or stainless steel wire, and then connect that lead to the copper wiring in your circuit. Now, I do want to say a few things on the topic of inductance, because when you wind wire into a coil, you're also technically creating an inductor of sorts. Any loop of wire produces a magnetic field when current flows through it, and multiple turns reinforce that field, which is what creates inductance. A straight wire has very little inductance, a coil with lots of turns has more, and a tightly wound coil on a core has even more. And so a wire wound resistor has the potential to stop behaving like a pure resistor at higher frequencies. Now, that said, for basic DC loads, heaters, or dummy loads, this really doesn't matter that much. At less than 60 hertz, it's usually negligible. But in switching circuits, RF circuits, or any kind of faster power electronics, the inductance can start to cause problems. In many cases, the inductance of a basic wire wound resistor is only in the microhenry range, but depending on the application, that could still be significant. Now, I don't plan on going down that rabbit hole in this video, but if inductance is a concern, there's a few different methods of winding the wire which can reduce inductance. I'll put those up on the screen in case anyone wants to go and read more on that topic. For most DIY power resistors, especially those used as bench loads or heaters, a single layer spaced winding on a ceramic core is perfectly adequate and any inductance can be ignored. Now, with the wire wound onto the core, I'm going to start the process of embedding this in some refractory cement. The last time I made one of these, I 3D printed a open top plastic box to sit the tube in. And then once it's set, I just cut the plastic away to reveal the final product. Today, I'm going to try something new, for me anyway. I found these silicon molds online. I forget what they were originally intended for, but I think it was something to do with jewelry making. And I'm hoping to set the cement in these molds and remove the block without damaging the mold so that it's reusable. But we'll see how I go on that front. Okay, so it's the next day and I've left this to fully set. I'm going to try removing the silicon mold. And that went a lot more smoothly than I expected, to be honest, which is great because it means I can reuse these. Now, Nichrome has a relatively low temperature coefficient, but its resistance will change slightly as it heats. When testing the resistor, it's best to increase power gradually rather than applying full load immediately. If you can, test it with a bench power supply and limit the current flow to start. Start at a low power level and just observe how the resistor behaves as it warms up. Watch for any glowing hot spots or cracking and steam, which might indicate there's some moisture trapped somewhere. Slowly step the power up gradually until you reach the intended operating range. Ultimately, a DIY resistor like this is only as good as its thermal properties, much more so than the wire used. Surface area, airflow, and mounting conditions generally matter more. Refractory cement can store heat well, but it can also trap it, which could limit its ability to continuously handle power before failing. If you want significant continuous power, you could mount the resistor to a metal plate or heatsink. You could also mount it so that it's in a non-flammable enclosure with good clearance and lots of airflow. But anyway, that's how you design and build your own Nichrome wire wound power resistor. And if you made it this far, hopefully you found the process interesting and learned something too. If you did, please click like and subscribe. It genuinely helps support the channel. But that's it for this week. Thanks for watching.